Hello, and welcome to Women We Watch in Tourism podcast series. WWW is a platform where we provide a space for women to leverage collective wisdom, experiences, and inspiration from women powerhouses in our industry to become innovative game changers. We will be engaging in insightful conversations with women who have changed the face of businesses in our industry and trailblazers who have steered innovative and creative ideas. This is a must-listen podcast for women leaders, professionals, and entrepreneurs to become visible, break glass ceilings, and to grow their impact. We believe that sharing these insights will be a catalyst for women in our industry to unleash their potentials and to seize the crisis as a turning point. So join our conversations by subscribing to Women We Watch in Tourism podcast. A big warm hello to all our listeners. Welcome to Season 2 of Women We Watch in Tourism podcast series. In the last season, we featured women leaders and powerhouses in our industry who shared their collective wisdom and inspiration. We thank all our listeners for your overwhelming positive feedback that we received. In Season 2, we want to be more daring, courageous, and bold to tread on some controversial issues facing our industry and women in tourism. Joining us in this season's podcast is our co-host, Dr. Catherine Koo, an associate professor at the Griffith Institute of Tourism. She's a well-known gender expert and thought leader in our industry. She's a bold and unconventional women leader and academic, and we hope to have some real good fun in our conversations. In our first episode of Season 2, we welcome on this show an activist academic who has ruffled the feathers of many tourism stakeholders, Freya Higgins-Desbiolles. Freya is a multi-award winning researcher, lecturer, and change agent who has worked in tourism management studies for more than 20 years. Her insightful analysis of issues such as human rights, social and ecological justice, and sustainability issues has influenced tourism scholarship and practice. She is an original thinker and provocative analyst. Dear listeners, I'm so pleased to share our conversation with the very charismatic and courageous Freya. Freya, it's so lovely to have you on our show, Season 2, Episode 1. And Freya, it's such an honor to have you here. And as earlier Catherine has mentioned, you could choose to spend your time in so many other ways, but you have given us your time and you are here with us. And it's so lovely to have you here with us today. So thank you so much, Freya. How do you feel being on this show, Freya?
I am really excited to be here talking to the two of you and really honored. So thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Freya.
And Freya, I'm going to start off with the very first question for our audience to get to know you a little better. Catherine and I have been acquainted with you for a long time now, and we have seen you as a very, very charismatic speaker, a provocative analyst, and you have spoken on really some very important issues pertaining to tourism, on human rights, social and ecological justice and sustainability. But we would like to hear from you, Freya, in your own words. Tell us who you are and what you like to be known as.
Well, I am what I call an activist academic, or if I want to sound impressive, an activist scholar in tourism research. I did not plan to work in tourism. I fell into it. My interest was development and development studies. My degrees are in politics and international relations. So you can see why I've been gravitating towards human rights and justice issues in tourism, because that framework that I come from has influenced the way that I see tourism. My activism is both personal and also through my learning journey. I grew up on an island off the coast of North Carolina, and I witnessed the changes in my island by wealthier people coming from upstate or interstate to visit us. And we were one of the poorest counties in that state of the United States, and really strong tensions between locals and visitors. By the time I was in my mid-20s and my mother still lived on the island, I witnessed the local people not being able to afford to stay because of the pressures of wealthier people's second home ownership and pressing of infrastructures and development on the island. And I periodically go back there, and I no longer recognize the island that I grew up with. And I grew up in tourism. My mother ran a small shell shop, and her business was to tourists. And I, in fact, interacted with the tourists as I grew up and had jobs in hospitality on the island and in the area. In terms of my journey, though, it was when I came to Australia and I had a chance before I became an academic to work with the Nurungeri Aboriginal community here in South Australia, that I received the best training that you could ever have of being a non-Indigenous person working with Aboriginal communities through them, through their engagement with me and my work. And I have been with them since that time. Probably, I think my first engagement with them was in 1997. So this relationship goes back a very long way. And again, they were being pressured by a marina development at that point when I first started working with them. So these interests have brought me to this place that I'm making this contribution. And yeah, that unusual positioning that I had meant that my work is different, and it's been controversial, but it's also, you know, it's had a place and it's been respected. And I'm pretty pleased with the way my ideas have developed.
Oh, yeah. I think you totally deserve to be pleased, because I think from looking at many of our colleagues in academia, you are one of the very few who has the most number of articles published in the conversation.
Absolutely.
The things that you published in the conversation, they vary very much, right, from different issues. So what are you trying to achieve with these articles, Freya?
Okay. Well, I came into the conversation again a little bit by accident. We did have the gentleman that founded that come to our university and pitch the concept at the very beginning. But I didn't see myself as being one to contribute to it at that point. I love the idea of the conversation of taking academic scholarship and making it accessible to a popular audience. And I credit them with training me how to write more clearly and more effectively. Since I worked with them, my writing has been very different. It is very now clear and precise. And it was training through their editorial system that really helped me get rid of some of the academic language and the fat that features in our work or the inaccessible words. But what I was up to, you know, the first one I think that I did that really got traction was about naked tourism. So I can be silly. I won't call that activist research. It's the only time my husband helped me in my research, that when I said to him I was going to write about naked tourism, he did do some extensive research on that topic.
Freya, could you tell us a little bit about what you meant by naked tourism?
It's about this propensity of tourists who want to expose themselves on their holidays. So we're thinking, you know, there was an exotic dancer on Uluru who did a striptease, and it partly relates to the social media influencers trying to grab attention. But it is, you know, a critical topic in responsible tourism because the behavior can be very offensive in certain cultures. So people have been arrested for this disrespectful behavior. So that was one. I write a lot, though, about responsible tourism and exposing tourism industry's poor practices. The one that got the most success, because it hit just at the right moment, was about the cruise ship sector. And that one, I think it got 800,000 downloads. And within the hour of the article coming out, I got hate mail from someone from Cunard's cruise lines. It got the most media attention of anything that I've written, but it hit at that moment of COVID when the cruise ships were in the spotlight with the Diamond Princess in Japan and the Ruby Princess here in Australia and their role in COVID infections. What I am trying to do is to communicate these ideas of responsibility and being thoughtful about tourism and trying to influence the industry also through these articles, which are positive and engaged. And I have been amazed at what that has given me. It's given me a national and an international profile. I've had CNN, Al Jazeera, so on, all of these agencies calling to speak to me or have me interview. But I've also had people in communities. You know, I've had people in Eden talk to me about what's going on with them with the pressures of cruise tourism. I've been engaged in Newcastle with our colleagues there of Phoebe in particular, Phoebe Everingham, looking at pressures of the supercars race in Newcastle. And then I became sort of connected with the Wilderness Society in Tasmania and supporting some of their concerns about eco-lodge developments in national parks. So it really has given me influence that I craved. And really pretty easy to do. And I've enjoyed working with the editors at the Conversation. You know, they're very good at what they do, very hardworking people. And I think that they had a great influence. You know, the articles that I first wrote are not what you see. They teach you how to put it in a journalistic way and an engaging way. And over that time, I've learned from them. They've actually been kind enough to explain things like, you know, the hook in the right place. And, you know, you get some journalism tips from them. Right. So for anybody that's doing this work, please do approach the Conversation with a pitch. It's been one of the best things to advance my work that I've experienced in recent years.
Right. So Freya, I want to ask you this question. I'm just following what you're saying. You use this as a platform to communicate your ideas. You have received very favorable response from media who have followed up with your thoughts, your perspectives. But is that it? What more do you want? Do you want to shake the industry? Do you want to influence tourism policymakers? Do you want to make changes? You know, are you happy with what you are doing at the moment? Do you want to do a little bit more? Tell us, you know, what you really want.
I hear you, Nisha. I think I'm getting energy from you to say that I could do more. Don't rest on my laurels and work a little bit harder. Yes, there's always more. There's a duality in my work, and I'm not sure if people see this or understand it, that there is a vein of my work that is highly critical and is part of critical tourism scholarship. And I've been quite concerned that young critical scholars seem to think that doing that hard-hitting truth-telling of critical scholarship is being critical unnecessarily and overly negative. And there's a vein of critical research that's more interested in positive, hopeful sort of strands. My work is definitely critical. I'm very concerned about social injustices. And I actually believe in this era that we're in a very dangerous time for the future. And I think if we don't name what's wrong properly and fully, we'll never solve the problem. So the truth-telling part is not done yet, and we need to do that. I do respect the people of the other side with hopeful tourism, but I think critical tourism, as far as critiques, are really ongoing, necessary, because we've got structural injustices that won't go away. At the same time, there's a part of my work that is very positive about tourism as a social force, that if we can get it away from the corporatization that the industry has a hold of it with, then we can gear it more towards the public good. My recent work has been talking about defining tourism by the local community and gearing tourism toward the public good, so that all funds that come from taxpayers' money are actually geared toward public good outcomes rather than privatized, corporatized outcomes. So I am extremely positive in my work. That comes from my own life experiences, by the way, because I told you the negative about growing up on my island. But at the same time, my life changed when I became a Peace Corps volunteer in my early 20s. And that opened up my horizons to the world. And I became a very different person through that experience. And I consider Peace Corps really volunteer tourism. It's a type of volunteer tourism that occurs. So I know from my own experience that tourism has this capability to make us better people and make the world a better place through it. So I don't deny that, and I love tourism for that. But yes, I have plenty more to do. There is a little bit of a hidden strand to my work, which I will reveal here. I think some people realize this. I sometimes will put it in my bio, that I have an activist life, which I keep relatively separate from my academic life with the Tourism Alert and Action Forum. And that is where I'm working with networks and organizations that are in the grassroots of communities around the world. And they tend to be pretty angry about the impact of tourism. And for them, I have been with them since probably 2006 or 2007, I think is when I joined them. They've been existing longer than that. And with them, I'm actually free to do the work that's real activism that doesn't get compromised within academia. And I learn from them, because sometimes, you won't believe this, but sometimes I get soft. And sometimes I get a little uncritical of the industry. And so that relationship with the network of TAF keeps me grounded in the anger and the injustices that come from local communities that have the wrong things being done to them through tourism.
How do you not grow tired of doing this work, Freya? You said it's easy to do, but truth telling is not easy to do. Dealing with, people who don't want to hear the things you tell them is not easy to do. How do you bolster yourself from all these criticisms?
I realized that when I was working with the military, that I had capacities to support their needs and their activism. And at the same time, I learned and grew from them. As I said, they trained me to a great extent. And then I could use my voice and my positioning to support them and help them understand some of the forces that were arraigned against them, and to, act for them, to actually act in their interest in the ways that I can do. So that is where I get my energy. I do need some life balance, and I would warn anybody coming up below me, don't do what I do. This is a train wreck of a life that I'm leading, but it is what I chose, and I continue to do it as long as I can and in whatever ways I can. I'm certainly going to have to change. Going back to the positive, what I needed behind me to be successful was a team or someone that has my back. And I've watched coalitions form like you both have with each other, and we could name others. I've really respected the camaraderie that exists between Erica, Candice, and Jenny Small on the critical tourism group. I've never had that. I've never had anyone that's really had my back. And I'm not quite sure why that's the case. I am a loner. And I do know that I'm responsible for some of my own situation, that when you're in the position I'm in, you can often be too critical of other people. And I think I'm navigating my way around that to understand that that's a difficult position to be in, and for people to relate to you comfortably and safely when you come from that critical position. But that is one of the keys, is form networks, and particularly as I'm looking at what's coming with academia and you do research by teamwork, and the universities are wanting teams, it now also makes logical sense in an organizational context. But to have longevity, to do the right thing and to do the hard work, having a group of people who have your back, and you have theirs, and you support each other, in numerous ways.
Absolutely, Freya, because I think Catherine and I have been on this road for the last 20 months, and being a change agent or activist is not easy. Sometimes you're alone, sometimes you feel tired because there's so much that we want to do and we face lots of barriers, but we need a tribe of women, or tribe of women academics or otherwise, who support us on this road. And that's why we have these networks going in that direction. Freya, I want to ask you this question, which I think is pretty relevant to talk about at this moment. And I have read a lot of your work, especially when I was doing my PhD on spirituality in tourism education. You have spoken about tourism is killing tourism. Tourism has a problem, and tourism is so addicted to growth that it needs to be placed on a 12-step recovery program like the AA, and your notion of the last chance tourism, right? It's very interesting to explore what you have talked about. Now, I would like you to, first of all, share with us, your thoughts around this last chance tourism, and tourism is killing tourism, but also the relevance of your thoughts and your dialogue at this point in time during the pandemic, where tourism is almost at a long standstill. Do you still feel the same about over-tourism?
Yes, I do. And I'm watching the signs to see what comes. And I listen to other people who are also interested in this idea of whether tourism will be changed in a positive way by the pandemic or not. And I fear that they are right, that things are actually going to be worse when we open up, and that revenge tourism and even more crazy, frenetic travel and tourism will occur. Of course, it's only going to occur for the privileged, because there will be a lot of people that for whatever reason won't be able to afford to travel, because it's going to get more expensive and it's going to be less convenient than it was in the past for at least several years, as the system recovers from the crisis that we've been in and the breaks in the supply chain that have happened. So I don't think that people's attitudes have changed. And I think my intervention in the pandemic of writing that paper on socializing tourism was misunderstood, that I was saying that was what was going to happen. Instead, I'm advocating this is what should happen. This is what we should learn from the pandemic. So it's a normative writing that is trying to intervene in the space and change people's consciousness. But the fact is, the root of the problem with tourism comes from many aspects, but one is the psychology of people. And I have lived this myself. I come from a family that aspired to be middle class, but in fact was not middle class, it was lower class. And we struggled to have the money for holidays. And life was pretty damn tough. And so the holidays were when you got that chance to break away, maybe have time with your family that you can't have when you're struggling to get your money through your job. And then we're living in jobs that actually undermine our well-being and really make us unhappy. So the idea of escape through holidays is something that makes sense for people who are living lives on their daily lives that are not good for their well-being. Until we get to that fundamental issue that life is pretty crappy because we're in a capitalist system that is flogging people to death to just be able to make enough to pay the rent and survive, then we've got a real problem with this, that holidays are making up for lives that are not well lived at home. And then at the same time, we have corporations that are not being put in the place of being of service to the society in which they're running their business. And in fact, businesses have license to operate by the governments and the regulatory frameworks that governments set. And we could demand of them differently. Over-tourism comes from the cheap airlines, the Airbnbs, and the various business entities trying to make profit as much profit as they can with no limitations upon them. So, you know, it's up to us to rein them in. The logic of business is profits, but businesses operate because our governments allow them to, and then we allow them to by being their customers, customer base. And it is we that will reshape them. You do find a change happening. I am looking at younger people and seeing some positive signs. I had the lovely experience of putting an expression of interest to speak to the European Cities Marketing Conference that just happened. And there is a young leader who is a force of nature. And if you're looking for someone to interview in future, Signe Jungerstad, who comes from Copenhagen, is a very forward-thinking young leader. And she curated a program for that 2-day conference that opened up the ideas of destination marketers and destination managers to think much larger. And I was so thrilled. Like she was saying, tourism's tourism centric. What do we need to do to look at the bigger picture in which tourism operates? And she brought me in to speak about socializing tourism. And she brought in a speaker from the United States to talk about Black American travel and the Black American traveler and racism. So, you know, there are exciting things occurring. So in my view, we have to champion these changes. And I think we have a special role being educators in the classroom, because it is we who are educating the future managers and change makers in tourism. So we need to show them that tourism's more than this phenomenon of business supply of experience to tourists. It's much more than that.
Absolutely. I just want to go back to what you said before. Did you say, Freya, holidays are made for lives not lived well at home?
Yes.
Well, that is so startling. And when I heard that, it's like, this is a reflection question for all of us.
I see you on Facebook, Catherine, doing your van life, and that's living life well to the max and creating something that's very different. That's it, you know. And I watch, Facebook is for us a really great tool to just get an insight into people's lived lives. And you can tell those academics that are learning to live a quality of life and then show it, and then give permission to others to do the same. Yeah. Mike and her horses just make me feel so wonderful. And then when I used to kayak, this is where I would go kayaking with the black swans. But, you know, I have these mangroves, which are 10 minutes from where I am now. And we've got dolphins and we've got black swans. We've got migratory birds. I can't think of any place more beautiful. So why would I have to travel to the Sundarbans in India to go see a beautiful mangrove forest when I have this at home? And we do need to start thinking about change. You know, I'm not a scientist, but I listen to the scientists. I look at what's happening with global warming, and I really don't see how we have a future. And yet what's happening is most tourism scholars just keep going on and on as if it's not going to happen. And the only people that I see that I can see a change in their behavior, and I'm one of them, you know, I will hop on a flight eventually to go to the next conference or something that I want to do. But James Hyam, I don't think is doing that anymore. Xavier Font stopped doing it. They're starting to live the ethos of the change that they've recognized through their work on this. And I think all of us really need to face this. The pandemic's been one wake-up call, but we're about to have waves of crises hit us. And so this idea of living well locally and living connected is what's going to take us into the future. And yeah, holidays are great. I wouldn't be the person I am. I'd be a racist sitting in North Carolina right now if I didn't get out of there. So I'm not saying we never travel again, but I think we have to get a lot more thoughtful about it, and travel needs to go back to being something special. And I think we need to realize our privilege and to be ethical in our choices. That's what I think is coming.
Freya, you mentioned before that academia softened you
that you had to go back to the tourism alert group to ground you, to be the person that you are, to do the work that you came to do. Why do you say that? Why do you say academia has softened you? What does that mean?
Well, you have a job and you're tenured and you owe them. And I've done a double workload to do some of the activism that I've wanted to do. I've had to then produce A-star journal articles for the bosses. And I don't complain about that because I'm paid by them. So, you know, I do have to live up to their mandates. And I've used the university for some of the work that I've wanted to do, and used that capacity and access that the university has given me. But I've taken on projects probably that I'm not so interested in, and I won't name them, that are telling positive stories and perhaps wouldn't be the ones that I choose. You know, right now, if I was doing what I choose, and I'm very close to getting to doing what I choose, I'd be doing the most ratbag thing I could, like fly to Tasmania and be there with the Wilderness Society and getting in on the ground on some of these developments, because I think those assaults on our national parks that are happening in Queensland and in Tasmania and here in South Australia are important. And that's the work that I love doing. But in making the university happy, I have tried to get grants and work with my colleagues and do that kind of work that's expected from the masters that be. And, you know, it's great. I've met people that I like. It's not bad. But when you start doing that, then you begin to compromise and change your language, and you've got to get along. I've always had a problem with many in the mainstream industry for them to see me as relevant. And I have had it. The work I did on Kangaroo Island got caught in the divide between pro-development and anti-development groups.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges we women academics face in academia?
Well, it's a man's world. It's an absolute man's world. And I think it's hard being a female academic in this space and thriving. I don't have the lived experience. And, you know, in this, it's really important to speak to people with lived experience, which I think both of you may have or not, I'm not sure. But the pressure to thrive and to be what's called a success when you've got caring responsibilities, and, you know, someone my age might have caring responsibilities to children and to parents and get caught in the sandwich. And we talk about, you know, responsibilities at home. We know the crisis of the pandemic with people having multiple roles when they're in lockdown at home and being the one that's seen to be the caretaker. The university so far has not made it a conducive space for women to thrive and succeed. Though I am seeing programs come through, I'd like to ask the new generation of women scholars, is that giving them what they need? Because I don't know. I see Calthy giving caring allowance so that people can attend the next upcoming Calthy conference. That's a step in the right direction. But how do we get to this power? Well, you know, women are not at the top of the game in senior management in the university, so we're not there. But then I don't want to see women get into those positions of power and act like men. Maybe that's something that we can do, is to ask, what is it that we think is good female leadership? And how do we get these leaders in the senior management roles in a corporate university? Because the fact is, after COVID, the universities are actually going to be even worse on managerialism and corporatization. But it matters. You know, I did have the ability through being in the university to do the things that I've done. You know, that positioning supported my agenda, and I've had a big impact because of that. So I'm grateful for that. And I don't think I could have done it from external to the university at all. So we need to make these universities thriving places for women's scholarship and women's leadership. And women's knowledges has such value to the disciplines, including tourism. So we need to explore what it is without, following a male patriarchal form of leadership.
Freya, leadership, women leadership need not necessarily be in academia, and those of us who are giving our voices in not just, in the industry, but a voice in media, or writing articles or in this podcast, we can inspire women around us, and that is why in this Women We Watch in Tourism podcast, we want to share the lived experiences and narratives of women like yourself who are major sources of inspiration to us. So Freya, I'm going to ask you this question. Who is the one woman that you watch? We want to know who inspires you.
She's looking for names to interview in the next podcast.
Well, Sinje Jungerstad is one that I would recommend. I love her energy, and her curating of that European Cities Marketing Conference showed a spirit, and she has a warmth that I'm lacking, and I really enjoyed her energies. There are plenty, and you both are some of them.
Thank you.
Stroma Cole, like me, can be abrasive. Stroma and I share some personality traits that I think are similar, probably coming from NGO work, because, in NGOs, we are pretty abrasive. But Stroma's done quite amazing work. And again, I don't think she's gotten the recognition that she's deserved as well. And she's worked really damn hard to achieve what she's done. There's young scholars coming in, and I love the energies coming off of young scholars and people following what they believe. And I think we need to look at them and look out for them. Antonia Canosa, doing Youth Voices in Tourism, is bringing in a perspective that I think is so valued. And how do we ensure that they thrive? And again, a young mother. I know that Antonia is a young mother. And these are such difficult times with this. So yeah, a lot of women's voices that are shaping things. And I love the creativity I'm seeing coming from the leadership, and people doing their own pathways of making sure that women's success, women's knowledges are getting heard.
I think you are courageous where you need to be courageous, and no one will do the work that you do. And I think people need to understand that, it is people like you, that people like us have the things that most people don't fight for. Yeah. And so on behalf of everyone, I thank you for doing the work that you do. And I know it's not easy, even though you say that it is. I know it is not easy, and it's tiring work for you. So thank you for doing that.
The other thing is, I'm a nice person. I don't like being difficult. I come from Southern culture, and my rudeness can be quite shocking. And it's not my natural personality to be this way. I speak rudely when I'm speaking on behalf of what I think is a justice issue, and then I have no mercy.
Yeah,
but then also, after I say what the truth is, whatever it is, the truth I have to say is,
yes,
I will then be very positive and very warm to the person I'm disagreeing with.
Yes.
So with Jim Butcher, people are watching this conflict. And in the meantime, I'm writing him and saying, would you contribute into a book I'm co-editing? He doesn't treat me with the respect back, but that's how I treat him. I respect his point of view. I respect him when he does good work. At the moment, I think he's doing some rubbish, but he's done some really good work in the past, and I think his point of view is valuable. So that is my technique, is that I can be very rude in a meeting when I've got to say what I've got to say. But personally, I'm not rude to individuals, and even people I disagree with or people that I've had a conflict with, I don't hold grudges. And I think that's the way you need to be.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely wonderful, you know, Freya, because I've watched your conversations, I've watched your writing. I think you're so respectful when you disagree, you know, and that's what we should also learn to respect, you know, people having diverse views, all right, and not call that being difficult.
Also, honesty is not an easy medicine to swallow. So when you're honest with people, people can get really defensive, and then you have to protect yourself against that defense, right? So it is not easy to be honest with people who you have not yet had a relationship with. And I do want to also, you know, pull in a plug for you, because you are one of the very few people who will actually write to me and encourage me and say, Catherine, you're doing good work here, or you're doing well here. And, you know, like, people don't see, I think people who don't know you can't see, they don't see that in you, but you, and even Stroma does that as well. She was the one who said, you know, have you talked to this person when she sees me doing work in a certain area? So I think people need to see the behind the scenes of the person rather than judge from the outside.
I've had to say sorry for mistakes when I've been wrong, and, you know, I have been wrong. And that's part of learning and engaging. And when somebody's criticized me, which has happened a lot, I listen to that. I do listen and think about whether I'm right or whether, you know, there's a different approach to be used. And I'm evolving as a result of that. So that's something else that I think is important for all of us, is listening, learning, and growing. The worst thing you can be is an activist on the left and always think you're right. That would be horrible.
Absolutely.
But, you know, Jane Goodall said that it doesn't take up much to be considered a difficult woman, and that's why there's so many of us, Freya. I don't think you're difficult all the time. I think you're difficult when you have to be and where you need to be. Do you consider yourself a difficult woman?
I'm afraid I am. Yeah, I am.
Well done, Freya.
Yeah, I am. I'm a difficult personality. But what I like is I say my point and then I shut up and I listen. And that, I think, is the key. You know, you can be difficult. We need difficulty in this world that we're coming into, because we've got to change. And that's one thing I respect Jane for doing at her age. She's still committing her life to making positive change in the world for the future, when she's not going to be with us for terribly much longer. And she still has a vision of making a contribution. Yes. And we need people out on the streets. You know, Extinction Rebellion here in Adelaide glued themselves to the highway a couple of days ago. And I thought, damn, I love them. And, you know, that is what we're going to have to do. Things are going to get a lot more difficult coming, and we need difficult people. We need people willing to put their life on the line, their career, their reputation, their future on the line. Yeah. I don't know that I'm brave enough for that. You know, these are questions that we're all going to have to ask ourselves now, because for the moment, I've paid a price for what I've done. I haven't had a strong academic career because of my choices, but I've made those choices and I've been fully willing to do that. But that's not big prices. I think now we're coming to the time where we all need to be difficult and make decisions about how we're going to respond in the future to creating change that's going to make it so that we can all thrive and survive into the future. So bring on more difficulties.
Freya, I think all three of us have made the choices in our lives to bring about changes, you know, in whatever that we believe. And I thank you for the choice you made to be here with us, you know, despite having so much on your plate. And Freya, your conversation to us has been a major source of inspiration today. My thoughts have been zooming here and there, and I've been thinking of what more I should do, you know. And thank you so much for sharing so openly, and you've been so authentic and also so brave, you know, to bare your soul today with us. Can you share one last takeaway that you want our listeners to get from this episode, Freya?
Well, I would just like to say that it's up to all of us to create a better future and a better future for others and for more than humans within this beautiful ecologies that we live and thrive in. Let's all do our part to make positive changes and be part of this future that we want to see and create.
Sure.
And how can listeners connect with you, Freya, online if they're interested in finding more about the work that you do or working with you?
Well, I'm searchable. This name is pretty unique of Freya Higgins-Desbiolles. I've still got my official email. I have a YouTube channel. I only have 37, I think, subscribers to my little YouTube channel. I'm old-fashioned and probably not conquering this technology very well. I love emails. I respond to emails, and I am on Twitter and LinkedIn. And I particularly love to hear from people who are doing good work and just want to share that or connect. I really love that. I see some young scholars coming up, young women scholars leadership coming through, and I'm looking forward to seeing a future in tourism where these lovely energies are coming in and helping change this thing that we all care about so strongly, change it for the better.
Right. And I really hope that your voice is heard on many, many, many more platforms, Freya. It needs to be heard.
Thank you, Nisha.
And I hope more platforms open for you. And, this is going to be an amazing way where we can make changes in our industry. So thank you, Freya, for being here, for being with us, me and Catherine, and for inspiring us today. And I'm sure our listeners are going to get inspired by whatever you have shared today as well. So thank you and have a lovely day, Freya. Thank you so much.
A million.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
To all our listeners, a sincere thank you for being with us on Season 2, Episode 1. We hope you enjoyed listening to Freya's very open and authentic conversation with us as much as we did. I really loved her candid and very unconventional views. If you like this episode or would like to share your views, please connect with us on womenwewatchtourism@gmail.com. Please share this episode with women around you to inspire them. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Insta, as well as subscribe to us on all major podcast platforms. So till we meet again on Episode 2, this is your host, Nisha and Catherine signing off. Stay inspired.